good morning and welcome to the first of our Lent readings for 2022. Thank you for joining us. I hope you'll stay with us as we go on this journey of 40 readings, 6 a week, Monday to Saturday, no reading on the Sunday. And we're going to follow up on the theme of last year. You'll remember, if you joined us last year, that we looked through the books of the Old Testament. Well, we're going to continue that now onto the New Testament. There's only 27 books for the New Testament, so that means the longer books will get more than one day. And we start with Matthew, which is one of the longer books. So Matthew will be, we'll focus on some of that today and again tomorrow. Now Matthew is the first of the Gospels. Matthew, Mark, Luke and John, 4 accounts of the life of Jesus that focus predominantly on his ministry, those 3 years of ministry, but also focus particularly on the last week of his life with his death and resurrection at the end of that. Matthew, Mark and Luke are all quite similar in the material they include, and as such are known as the synoptic Gospels. Maybe we'll look at that a bit more when we get to Mark. John takes a different angle and we'll look at that next week. None of the Gospels include the names of their authors, but we've got good historical reasons for believing those they're attributed to are actually those who wrote them. And for Matthew, that means Matthew is the disciple of Jesus, the former tax collector, and as such he's ideally placed to be able to confirm the eyewitness accounts of what Jesus said and did. He arranges his gospel around 5 great discourses, and in that sense it's trying to mirror the first 5 books of the Old Testament, what's known as the Pentateuch or the Law, and the 5 books of Moses. And in that he's trying to say that this is that Jesus is greater than Moses, the great lawgiver. And of those 5 discourses, the first and longest is the Sermon on the Mount, and that's where we're going to begin today. Now the Sermon on the Mount covers chapters 5 to 7. That's more than we can read, so I'm just going to read the parable that Jesus tells to conclude this great discourse, and then we'll look a bit at what it says and what it means. So Matthew chapter 7 from verse 24. Therefore everyone who hears these words of mine and puts them into practice is like a wise man who built his house on the rock. The rain came down, the streams rose, the wind blew and beat against the house, yet it did not fall, because it had its foundation on the rock. But everyone who hears these words of mine and does not put them into practice is like a foolish man who built his house on sand. The rain came down, the streams rose, the winds blew and beat against the house, and it fell with a great crash. When Jesus had finished saying these things, the crowd were amazed at his teaching, because he taught as one who had authority, and not as their teachers of the law. Now the Sermon on the Mount includes a lot of the well-known sayings of Jesus. It begins with the Beatitudes. It has things like do not worry, the narrow gate, being salt and light, treasure in heaven. And it talks a lot about the law as parallel to what Moses had said. The law can be split into 2 halves. You had the ceremonial law, the sacrificial law, the bit that says how we get right with God. And then you have the moral law, which effectively says how you live, how you stay right with God. Right at the beginning, in chapter 5, verse 17, Jesus says he's not come to abolish the law, but to fulfill it. And what he means in that is he's come to fulfill the ceremonial side. He will offer the perfect sacrifice. But the moral side, he elevates. And it parallels in many ways the 10 Commandments. And it has the bits like Jesus says, you've heard it said, do not murder. Well, I say, even if you have anger in your heart towards your brother or sister, it's as if you've murdered them. You've heard it said, do not commit adultery. But I tell you, if you even look lustfully at somebody in your heart, it's that you've already committed adultery. Jesus elevates the law, and then at the end he gets to this parable of 2 men building, one building on rock, one building on sand. And it's easy to understand what Jesus means, because right from the very start he lays it out in the first verse of that. Therefore, if anyone hears these words of mine, talking about what he said at the Sermon on the Mount, and puts them into practice, they're like a wise man who built their house on rock. Effectively saying, if you follow all I've said and build your life on this foundation, you will be secure. But if you hear it and ignore it, it's like building on sand. In 1992, Hurricane Andrew hit South Florida. And there was pictures of one area where there was all devastation everywhere except for one house that stood. And the reporter interviewed the owner of the house, and asked him why his house stood when the others had fallen. This is what he said: I built this house myself according to the recommended Florida State Building Code. Most building companies think the code is a bit over the top and cut corners to reduce time and costs. But when the code recommended 2x6 roof trusses, I used 2x6 roof trusses. Everyone builds on one code or another. And Jesus says if you build on his code, on his teaching, then when the storms of life come, you will stand secure and firm, and stay secure and firm for all eternity. Until tomorrow, when we'll look at Matthew again, have a blessed